All right, well, it's a dot-com bubble all over again. This one comes from Forbes. SEC reverses day trading rule in boon for retail brokers. Da, 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 da. Let's see. So the SEC is unwinding a rule born from the wreckage of the dot-com crash. On Tuesday, regulators approved a change that would get rid of the so-called pattern day trade rule, a two-decade-old requirement that forced active margin traders to keep up with at least $25,000 in their brokerage account if they want to make frequent trades. The rule came out the rule came out of the early 2000s when regulators worried that small investors were taking excessive risks by buying and selling stocks with borrowed money. Under under the old rule, anyone who made four or more trades in 5 business days was labeled as a quote pattern day trader unquote. Once that happens, the trader had to keep at least $25,000 in the account at all times. Critics said the rule never made much sense. They argued it acted more like a wealth test than a safety measure. A person with $24,000 could be blocked from making trades, while someone with $25,001 could keep going. Regulators noted that the rule was written for a different era, before zero commission trading apps, real time data, and easy access to market research. The change could be good news for retail investors who want more flexibility. It could also be a win for brokerage firms like Robinhood and Webull that have courted novice investors with lower balances. They're likely to see more trading activity. Critics say that the old rule existed for a reason. They argue that younger, unsophisticated investors are trading more aggressively, often influenced by social media, online personalities, and options speculation. They worry that removing the $25,000 requirement can make it easier for inexperienced traders to take on too much risk. Webull, the St. Petersburg, Florida-based retail broker, which had $564 million in revenue in 2025, says that the rule had become outdated. Anthony Denier, the company's U.S. CEO, said the retail investors are now, quote, more informed, unquote, and have better tools than they did when the rule was first created, and that the changes could reflect how modern markets work and remove limits that can feel arbitrary. The new system will focus less on how many trades a person makes and more on whether the account actually has enough money to support the risk at any given moment. Brokerages will now be able to monitor accounts in real time and block trades that would create a margin deficit. Firms that don't want to build on those systems can instead calculate whether a customer fell short at the end of the day. If a trader does not fix that shortfall within 5 business days, the brokerage can freeze the account from taking on more borrowed money trading for up to 90 days. Small shortfalls under $1,000 or 5% of the account size can be ignored. Um, Whether the change ultimately helps retail traders will take years to answer. The next time a meme stock implodes or a wave of small investors blows up an option, critics will almost certainly point back to this decision. One thing is clear, though: the rule change is good for retail brokers. The shares of Robinhood and Webull were both up more than 10% on Wednesday. So so they talked about the dot-com bubble and how this rule came from that. But to be fair, it's not entirely like the traders' fault. The dot-com bubble was the way it is. It's a lot of other things as well. But for sure, a bunch of people getting onto the stock market exchange that, I'm not trying to be mean, but have absolutely no reason being there. Um, and and there's a couple things on top of that. One, it's $25,000. You have to maintain that balance. But like removing the minimum balance requirement for day trading would likely increase the number of individuals participating in the market, at least day trading wise, because there's not that barrier to entry. Kind of like in the 90s, I bring this up all the time. Back in the 90s, when Bill Clinton got rid of the whole you need like 25% or 30% down to buy a house, he got rid of that. So it's like, you can buy a house with zero down, which is stupid, but people do it. Boom, inflated assets, because now for most of these these companies, these shares, they're not producing more shares. They're not making more shares. The number of shares they have is capped. But now, theoretically, you have a lot more people fighting for those shares. This, you know, basic economics, same amount of supply, increased demand, price goes up. So you can expect what's called, stocks to go up. And we have an article, a couple things down about uh, the problems with this, but we can get to that. We'll get to that when we get to it. Removing barriers to day trading could shift market behavior by increasing the volume of speculative transactions. Speculation involves coping with inherent risk to minimize it, but also reflects a desire to save, quote, paper profits, unquote, before a market slide causes an immediate stampede. Yeah, that's another thing. They brought it up in the article. It was like people are taking on small loans. One, if you're trading, don't take on loans. To me, that just sounds irresponsible. You should it. I'm not equating trading stocks to gambling, but you should treat it like gambling. You should only trade what you're willing to get rid of, because you never know how things are going to react. But yeah, for example, that was another thing. It was the we have a lot more people going in, so that means your volatility increases and volatility increases, which means sometimes stocks are going to just shoot up and sometimes stocks are going to shoot down. Because I'm not trying to be mean, but like during the dot-com bubble, ordinary people who had no business doing so became day traders as market valuations for companies with no earnings soared. So meaning that like companies that probably weren't going to be like, $1,000 share companies were becoming $100,000 share companies just because we had a lot of people investing into things that they don't understand yet. And when you have a lot of people doing it at one time, it creates volatility. Kind of like during the 1920s with the run on banks. A handful of people were trying to draw money out of the banks. Banks didn't have the money, so now everybody, because you didn't have to have a minimum amount, or at least a large amount in the bank to be in the bank, because a handful of people couldn't get their money, everybody wanted to try to pull their money out. Same thing would happen with stocks. If, like, for example, what was it? GameStop. Everyone, like, people were like, what was it? Like, the GameStop meme. Everyone's like, just buy GameStop stock and it goes up. And because everybody's doing it, the price is going to inflate more so than probably the meme would have generated on its own. And that was kind of the one of the problems with like the dot-com bubble. And they brought it up here, which I find interesting. Is like, yeah, the SEC is unwinding a rule born from the wreckage, not the fun time, the wreckage of the dot-com crash. And now I have a theory, and I'll go into it now, but we'll also go into it later. Is that like we've been here we've heard reports that AI companies are not doing so hot. What was the company that hasn't turned a profit? I think most of them haven't, but what was one company that keeps stating they haven't turned a profit? What was it? Was it OpenAI?
Every AI company?
Yeah, for sure. But there's
OpenAI. I know Anthropic isn't turning a profit, but I think you're talking about OpenAI.
Yeah, and it's like, I think, now granted, I could be wrong. I'm not on the SEC board or whatever, but I think that they see that companies are not turning a profit, but they've bet so much on AI that if it crashes, now granted, I think it's crashing, period, but I think if it crashes before we even have like IPO stuff, everything's going to get wrecked.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what they're doing is lowering or essentially removing that barrier to entry, at least for day trading. Like, not trying to be mean, but if you're going to be day trading, you should probably know what you're doing. You probably shouldn't be borrowing money to do it. But, besides the point. Sorry.
Come on now. Come on.
I mean, besides the point, but it's like, I think they're worried.
Hold on. How else are the ultra wealthy supposed to scalp money off of the retards? Come on.
Exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that they're trying to get people into the market once the IPOs hit. Because we've been talking about it. We're talking about it. People who are like passively interested in like stock trading, they know about it. About the IPOs coming at the end of the year for AI companies. If it looks like it's dead in the water, they're not gonna be able to scalp the poor people. So they need a bunch of people in the market now, putting in money, inflating prices, And then once the IPOs hit and prices will inflate even further, the rich people know what's going on. They pull out, leaving the poor people holding deflated value stocks. This is nothing new. This happened during the dot-com bubble. This happened during, I think it was like one of the crashes from the it was around, like, I think one of the crashes from the Great Depression itself was that everyone was investing. A bunch of rich people were like, if we have a bunch of random people who don't know the markets as well as we do, they're gonna. I'm not saying I sympathize with the rich people, but it's kind of like you're a cook in a restaurant, and the customers now get to come in and make their own food next to you. I'm walking out. Maybe I'll make a cheeseburger for myself and then walk out. So,
Right.
I mean, that's my main issue.
This feels almost like intentionally predatory. This is like the sports betting of the investment world, where you're letting in a bunch of people who it would be irresponsible. Like, you're taking down what was an important guardrail to sort of the safety of all involved, and are doing so like friction is an important tool that tells you something about someone, right? And when you remove friction, you kind of just let everyone in, which can have its benefits. But when you remove that, like, hey, if you're gonna be a day trader, you need at least 25 grand here, it's basically saying, hey, we think it's for better stability and safety of everyone that, like, you not only do you have some skin in the game, but you need some, like, relatively pretty. If your average American is making 70 some odd $1,000 a year, that's like almost a third of your income. Like, you need to have some serious skin in the game if you're gonna try to make like a living off of this, or get really seriously involved here. This can't just be a like, I don't want to say one-off, but like, we don't want people throwing away every penny they have just to, like, constantly try and fail and try and fail and try and fail. Like, we want you to put up some cash up front, and for you to really, really think about, like, what it means to get into this. And when you remove that barrier, all you're essentially saying to the people who are already in and who already have all of their stuff, is basically, like, who are already in and already know the markets and already know all the rules and whatnot, is when you let in a whole bunch of new people, you're essentially saying, all right, well, here's a whole bunch of poor people for you to just, like, feed off of. And it's like, oh, well, great.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's good for them, but it's not so great for you. And it's very destabilizing. It takes what is already a kind of lopsided system and makes it even more lopsided.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And a couple things you brought up. The one point on one, an example is, like, now granted, I don't know how everyone else's gyms is, but I've been to a couple gyms. The YMCA, for my opinion, is usually a lot cleaner than the Planet Fitness. So, and my analogy for that is, like, when you pay more for a members only club kind of thing, there are generally benefits to it. There's more structure, there's more organization, as opposed to you pay $1 to go to Planet Fitness. I mean, it's great because now essentially everyone can go into the gym, but now the problem is everyone is going to the gym. You're going to have people who don't clean up after themselves, don't put the weights away, stand next to the equipment but pretend they're still on the equipment, and then they'll yell at you, and things like that. So barrier to entries usually ensure, like, now granted, it's not a guarantee, but, barrier to entries, members only crap, they, you can at least expect a level of organization that comes from your money. So that's one thing. So we remove that barrier for stock trading. Second of all, you brought up not call sheets. You brought up, like, sports bet trading. That also might be a reason why they're doing with this, because they've realized they've lost a bunch of people who want to try to make money on the market. Don't want to day trade, but put their money in the stock market to hope to get the money back. Now a bunch of people are just going to Kalshi, putting their money there. They just lost some customers. I know Kalshi isn't, like, betting, because it's like you're betting on, like, stocks of some sort of outcome or whatever. And I think the SEC and, like, stock trading is like, well, we've just lost a bunch of poor people who are giving us money anyways because they don't know what they're doing. So going to a
Mm-hmm.
what's it called? Going to an app that isn't backed by the FTC, so they don't have the same restrictions. They don't have the same regulations to keep people not throwing all of their money away. Things similar to that. So that might be another reason. I don't have any evidence of that, but it might be another reason why they're like, maybe we should lower the barrier. I mean, I wouldn't mind, honestly, because they did bring up, like, people are more informed these days. They have instant trading apps. They don't have to necessarily go through an actual broker. They can go to, like, Robinhood, Webull, Fidelity, and just, like they're shopping on DoorDash, click, I want this much, bam, paid. You know what I mean? Then I can't remember about Robinhood. I think like Fidelity, Webull, and to an extent like Coinbase. They always have like, oh, here's some recent articles on the company you're looking at, so you can read about it. So you have a lot more faster information, and to an extent, I do say to an extent, like at least like when brokers call you, they're trying to sell you a product. With Robinhood and like Webull, they're not, the only product they're selling is their services. They, you know what I mean? You're not pressured into buying something from somebody, because that's all brokers are doing. They're just taking stocks from one person to another, getting that commission in between. So you know what I mean? So my point with that is that like it's like going to the store to buy hot dogs as opposed to someone you don't know trying to sell you hot dogs. You're probably more comfortable buying hot dogs on your own, but because you don't know what that person's done. But where was I going with that? Yeah, so I mean, like I wouldn't mind it so much because of that, but I would prefer if like a lower barrier to entry. You know what I mean? Like be like you need $15,000. You know what I mean? Like you're a lot more informed these days. You have apps that will provide you news or whatever on a dime, the dime that they're posted. But still, the fact that there's no coverage for these people, which kind of tells me that they don't care if something happens. Now, grant something happens to people. Now, they did say like, shortfalls of $1,000, 5%, they can freeze it. That doesn't mean anything if they've already got the money. You know what I mean? Like if they take 1,000, I say they. I do mean like some dude loses $1,000. They've got that money. They don't care if that dude, to an extent, fills back. I mean, they want the dude to fill back up so he can trade again. But there's no cushion for him. If he doesn't trade ever again, doesn't matter. They've got it. Kind of like casinos. Mm-hmm. If the dude loses $1,000, on blackjack, they don't care. They've got the chips. They only care if he's actually going to come back and play again. So the fact that there's like no cushion for bad trades shows me that either A, they're trying to inflate something, which in my opinion is true. B, they're trying to get people that left them to go to Kalshi, because Kalshi's like I've gone there a handful of times. It's lucrative, you know what I mean? Like I don't care about to an extent. It's like I don't care what Facebook's doing. This guy says he's gonna eat 20 hot dogs in 10 minutes. I don't think you can do it. You know what I mean?
on that point of it being lucrative, Kalshi also being a no minimum stakes, anyone can enter. They don't care how much money you have in your bank account, or they do, just as long as you can like pay up, you're good. And you can. It doesn't check to see who's setting a bet where. So like I could make a bet that I eat a hot dog and then I make bet, man eats hot dog, right? Or insert person, right? Who I am, right? I give my name and my blah, blah, blah. Eats hot dog at this time, at this location. And then I, with an anonymous account, put, $10,000 on yes. And then someone else or whatever, however the site works, if I win, well, then I 1.5x my money, or I double my money based on whatever the odds might be, right?
Yeah.
And maybe I can control like whatever I think the standard, right? Like we've seen a lot of this with like some of the political stuff recently, right? It's like, oh yeah, a totally anonymous account just put this 9-leg parlay on exactly how the first 3 days of the Iranian conflict will play out. Oh, hey, look at that! They were right about every single one of them, and just made $150 million. How weird is that? Well, too bad we can't track that person or figure out who they were, because if that would just be inconvenient and annoying, and
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to do it. And it's like, obviously, the no accountability here is an intentional tool to do. I mean, people call it like wealth transfer, right? You can just suck a whole bunch of money out of people who are like, nah, that can't happen, right? And on that point, you can kind of invert that. There's a bot I saw. If you look at the data, it's something like 60% of all Kalshi and whatever the other one is, Polymarket, whatever betting things, all 60% of them resolve to no, or the false, right? Whatever the thing that you're betting happens, 60% of them resolve to the thing not happening. And so this person set up a bot that just always puts money on no, and it's so far made them a decent chunk of change. But yeah, like this, dropping the barriers and that stuff, where I understand that, like, trying to outcompete these like betting markets that work in like a similar ish way to how investment markets work, but a little bit more detached from reality. um, I think my pet conspiracy is that, like, I would not be surprised if the people who are in charge of the betting markets are buddy buddy with the people who are in charge of like the SEC and whatnot, and are just trying to turn the stock market into the betting markets, because the betting markets are a more effective like wealth transfer machine, even if they're more volatile. So if you care less about the long-term health of your nation's economy and more about immediate enrichment of yourself, to then comport over, or not comport, to then port over to um, assets or other things that have a bit more stable value. So you start with this very volatile thing that you can somewhat exert influence over, extract all the value out of that volatility, put it into more stable assets like, real estate or whatever else. Um, you can effectively like take a bunch of wealth and then hoard it. Hoard it is maybe not the right way to phrase it, but like effectively hoard it, or exercise sole judiciary over that, as opposed to have to negotiate it with the market, right? You no longer have to negotiate with the market, or the market is in a significantly more favorable position to you, but is also more stable in the long term, a la real estate.
No, yeah, like absolutely. And something now that I've thought about it for a bit, I wonder if like the SEC is like testing something here, because obviously you brought up the whole like, well, someone bet like it was like $10,000 that there would be a ceasefire by this day, and they came out with like $120,000, and they made that bet like 18 hours before the whole news came out. And another thing that I thought of was when I first heard about Polymarket was when it was during the WNBA games where people would randomly throw a device for women to use to have fun with. They would throw that onto the court, and after the first time, people started making calls on Polymarket about what color it would be, and how easy it would be to be like, oh, I'm gonna say it's gonna be blue, and then just bring a blue
Mm-hmm.
fun device to it, and then
Mm-hmm.
make all the bets on yes, and obviously there'll be people who bet no, it's not blue, it'd be whatever. And then even then you can make bets on other people's bets. You can actually make another account, be like, I'm bet it's gonna be green. You can bet no on green
Uh-huh.
because you know it's blue. Toss it out. You made money
Yep.
from two separate whatevers. But even in light of stuff like that, Polymark and Kalshi have only increased in users. Another example I think of is the Counter Strike market, the skin market. How different skins get pumped because companies, people in China with a lot of money can pump and dump skins.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of people that, at least what I'm seeing, the amount of people who still do stuff with like Counter Strike hasn't gone down. If anything, more people are
Yeah.
coming in to try to get on that Chinese pump and dumps. So I wonder if the SEC is
My
seeing
search
this and
history.
fair. I wonder if like the FCC is seeing this and they're like, because I've always held the theory that Valve, the people who with the Steam, the behind the Counter-Strike skin market, they don't care that these skins are getting pumped and dumped, because at the end of the day, they're still taking profits from this. I have to assume that the people in the SEC they're not just there for fun. They have their own stocks, they have their own options and things like that. And at the end of the day, if you have a bunch of, again, we say this at the beginning, you have a bunch of people who don't understand how manipulation works, you can profit off them easy.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a $25,000 barrier, that eliminates how many people you can rip off. And to an extent, if someone has $25,000 to start day trading with, if I was a betting man, if I was putting money on a Kalshi, I would say that person probably has an idea of what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not day trading. I also don't have $25,000 because I don't make that much. I don't know how to save that much. So, you know what I mean? So if someone has $25,000, it's kind of reasonable to assume, like, okay, he's got that money. He might know what he's doing with it. But if there's people out there you can manipulate, especially when the economy's going kind of crazy, you can make easy money off people. And not only that, all they got to do is be like, make their bag, wait for the crash, and be like, guys, this was a mistake. Let's put the rule back in. And then bam, you've made your bag, you cut off all the poor people, and now the only people left are people who know what to do with the markets. And they've made their bag, and they can work with it again. And this kind of, I'm terrible at segues, but this kind of leads back to the, you probably shouldn't be day trading or making bets on Kalshi if you don't have the money to work with it. And the next report comes from MSN. A new report reveals that 40% of Americans have less than $500 in savings. The U.S. dollar index, a key indicator of the dollar's strength against the world's most significant trading partners, has been on a decline for several consecutive sessions. On April 14th, it dropped to 98, reaching its lowest level since the beginning of the United States-Israel-Iran conflict. A bigger concern now is the faith of the Americans in the dollar, as the financial cushion most of them rely on is quietly shrinking. A survey commissioned by LendingTree and conducted by QuestionPro among 2,000 U.S. adults in February 2026 paints a stark picture. More Americans are seeing their savings shrink than grow. Nearly 3 in 10, or 29%, of Americans have less cash in savings than a year ago, compared with only 25% who have more. Another 40% say their savings have not moved at all, which in an inflationary environment is effectively the same as falling behind. The numbers are getting more alarmingly up close, and about 14% of Americans have no cash savings whatsoever, a figure that rises to 32% among those earning under $30,000 a year, and 20% among women. Among those who do have something saved, 32% have less than $1,000. Breaking it down further, 12% have between $1 and $99, 11% have between $100 and $499, and 9% have between $500 and $999. This means nearly 4 in 10 Americans are sitting on less than $500 in cash savings. This suggests that the cash that they have cannot cover most emergency expenses or even a single month of rent in most American cities. Why is money running out? The survey points clearly to the cost of living as the primary villain. When asked why they are not saving more, 34% of respondents said the cost of living and essentials consume all of their income. 2/3, or 66% of Americans, said that they had withdrawn from their savings in the past year, with the most common reason being food and essentials. Perhaps most strikingly is the emergency buffer question. Nearly half of Americans, approximately 45% of them, say they would not be able to cover more than 1 month of essentials if their income stopped today. A troubling 23% say their savings could not even cover a full week. Yeah, so I mean that's nothing new. We've known that because of the Iran war, oil being stopped, to two tolls that oil would have to go through. Prices go up because oil goes up, gas goes up, gas goes up. They cost more money to transport your goods because your goods cost more money. The company's not going to eat that. They're going to push it onto you and you as the consumer. Then, well, yeah, there you go. Prices go up. It's stated here, it's stated in the article, real income is measured by the volume of goods and services it can buy. When prices rise faster than wages, the real income of the bottom 50% declines, making it nearly impossible to set aside savings after meeting basic needs. It's kind of hard to save for a doctor visit if you can't eat enough to make it to the doctor visit. And when it comes to inflation, this is nothing new. We say this all the time. Inflation, it benefits those who own assets and punishes those who don't have assets. You buy 3 houses, and inflation goes up. Well, guess what? Your house just went up in value. You theoretically have more money because of your assets. You put your money in a bank account. Inflation happens. Well, the how much you can buy with that money goes down. So, I remember there was a story, I think it was in the 40s or 50s. I forgot what country it was, but inflation was so high that people would actually go out, take their money after they got paid, and buy washing machines. And hoard washing machines because it was a better retainer of value than just putting your money in the bank. Now, granted, putting money in the bank, because inflation usually isn't the best idea, but the benefit is that you have that money instantly. You can always access it, and when inflation's at 1 or 2%, you can work with it. You know what I mean? Like, if your apples went from $1 to $1.01, and let's say you buy 5 apples every week, and then 5 cents, you can manage it. But when the average inflation. Now, granted, I'm just talking about from the past year or the past 3 months because of the oil crisis. I'm talking about like COVID stuff because inflation, whatever. That's what happens. Like I remember it was like the second or third year of the Biden administration. Inflation peaked on average at like 9.4%, which was, I think, borderline Great Depression levels of inflation. And that's average. I remember seeing a report that eggs had gone up like 26% in inflation. Now, granted, prices have come down, but they're not reaching pre-pandemic levels. And with the war going on and all the oil being stopping from the Middle East, it wasn't going to go down forever. And if anything, not if anything, the article says so itself, it's going back up again. And what's it called? I do have a note here. I'm going to get into it really quick. Some economists argue that the real problem is not just how wealth is distributed, but a failure of production. If the economy is not producing enough goods and services efficiently, the resulting scarcity leads to high prices that consume the entirety of a worker's income. So yeah, I talked about it. Production going overseas. We talk about tariffs, but we're going back and forth on that with how if Trump can do it, what he can do, what he can't do, how long it lasts, how much it can be, whatever. But when we send all of our production overseas, and then there's a haltage in the oil, so not only is it overseas, it stays overseas because there's not enough to transport to us, and even if there is, it's at inflated prices because the oil prices have gone up. I think we're at like $98 a barrel, which is, it's gone down from like the past 2 weeks for sure, but I think like before the war, it was like, if I'm not mistaken, like $79, $80 a barrel, around there. So we are still up, down from like a week or two ago, but still up. So, so of course, now grant that prices are going to go up because of that. Anything you want to add? Did you want on a tangent there?
I don't know. I don't think the oil prices have settled. I think it's just going to be super volatile until the whole stuff with the Strait gets figured out. That's really about all the insight that I want to throw at that while we're still sort of in the heat of it.
Okay, yeah, I got you, And yeah, I don't think it's going down anytime soon. And even if, what's called, even if things get sorted out, like I say this a couple times. We eliminated like 30 of their top people, of their politicians.
Uh-huh.
It's gonna take a while to get people into those positions, unless the U.S. government already had like a handful of people that they had, an idea of. But besides the point, um, you know what I mean? Building up that infrastructure
Yep.
again to get it rolling, that's an issue. That's not including. I think I remember. I don't know how accurate this is, but it's kind of funny that when Iran first closed the Strait of Hormuz, they laid out a bunch of mines, but they didn't
Oh yeah, they
track.
don't know where all of them are.
They don't know where they all are, and I know what's it called. Like even if they're like, okay, we'll open it up, which I think I sent you a report. I don't know how accurate it is. It was kind of short, so usually with like short like reports, I'm kind of questioning if it's accurate. But like they said Iran folded and they're not going to test the U.S. or the Strait of Hormuz, whatever. But even if they were like, okay, we give in, we'll open it up, it's going to take time to find those mines. Um, Now, granted, I was thinking like we do have the U.S. has amazing technology, like 10 to 15 years, 20 years into the future that we see now, but who knows how long it could take because one, they didn't track where they placed them. B, it's moving water, so they can go anywhere. Three, C, I I don't even know if they know how many they had. You know what I mean? If they put 300 out and we get 295 of them, and then traffic continues, one blows up, everything's cut off again.
It shuts down again.
Yeah, it shuts down again. So then we have that issue. So it sucks for us as consumers. It sucks that things like this weren't taken. Now, granted, like I do think the conspiracy theory we've been talking about for like the past month is true. Because I remember seeing like some picture of a bunch of oil tankers flooding to Texas to get oil. But it's important to keep in mind that oil is for other countries. So if you were thinking of your oil going down until things make some drastic changes, those are other countries getting their oil. That I remember, I think it was like China gets like 55% of their oil from the Middle East. Japan gets like 40%. India gets like, I think somewhere it's like 20%. I could be wrong with these numbers. Please fact check me. But so those oils going for other countries. So even if it seems like, oh, we have a bunch of oil here, well, we're selling that oil and that money's going to the gas companies and the U.S. government. So that's, you know what I mean? That another example of it just hurting us. But it's kind of rough. Now, granted, there's a lot of people that blame Israel. And in fact, I think one of our generals, if I'm not mistaken, admitted that Israel pushed us into this. Okay, I say pushed. Israel said they were going to make an attack. And he said, we were going to do an attack anyways, but it wasn't going to be this soon. So we did it anyways. Which I'm like, or you couldn't have negotiated for like one, that kind of makes it seem like they control us. B, you couldn't have told them to be like, hold off for a few months. You know what I mean? I get that they've been having issues for years, but they've been having issues for years. They can postpone some stuff. But I remember that they admitted to that. Now, that was like 3 weeks ago. I could be wrong. I forgot who admitted it. I think it was like one of the, like, was it a dude, the head of the War Department?
I was pretty sure.
Yeah, anyways. But it's like, it sucks that they make, because I bring this up, politicians make decisions now because they don't have to deal with the consequences later. Especially Trump in his second and final term. It doesn't matter what he does. He's not trying to get reelected. I don't think with how many people are kind of turning his backs on him, I don't think he cares what they think. he's just doing what he wants, and he's rich. He can absorb whatever problems are happening, but they make decisions. They don't care how it affects us because they don't have to go for. Well, he can't, but a lot of other politicians we'll be talking about later. They don't have to worry about it if they don't want to run for re-election again. And even then, if they want to run for re-election, just 6 months before, it'd be like, oh, we're changing some stuff, whatever. So. Yep, that sucks. So, I don't, even if it, again, we said it, I don't know if, even if it did open up, it would take a while. I think our best bet is to, I mean, we're already, pumping the oil out of from Texas. I think we need to double time on that Venezuela stuff, because apparently, I didn't know this at the time. I knew it was large, but I guess Venezuela has, like, the largest oil reserves in the world.
Or one of, yeah.
And it's not about Greenland, too. Oh, wait, Greenland is for some kind of mineral. Never mind. But
it's rare, I think.
Yeah, rare earth metals, yeah. But again, it's, basic economics. Same amount of demand, less supply. We need to work on the supply. As opposed to Europe, where they're like, stop using electricity. Are they send you that?
Yeah, like everyone to turn off your lights, just crank it all down. Why make it just more difficult for the government? Yeah.
But so yeah, that's gonna suck. We'll see how this turns out. Again, probably not gonna be anytime soon. And not only that, usually gas prices go up in the summer because everybody wants to travel. So, and we're getting there anyways. Started taking the fans out at work again. But our next article comes from... Okay, now, I know we were just dunking on, Europe for telling their people to just shut off their lights for electricity to save money on energy instead of trying to create more supply. Whatever. This article does come from the BBC. But it says
BBC.
The BBC, the British Broadcasting Company or something like that. And I know it's like government run. Which
just British Broadcast. Broadcast is 2 words.
Broadcast. Oh, my bad. But it's government run. But so shares in this article, shares in shoe brand Allbirds, once seen on the feet of famous people like actor Ben Affleck and former U.S. President Barack Obama, soared on Wednesday after it announced plans to pivot from footwear to artificial intelligence. The San Francisco-based firm said it had struck a $50 million deal to become an quote, AI compute infrastructure, unquote, business and change its name to New Bird AI. The announcement sent the firm's shares surging by more than 580%, though its stock value is still more than 90% lower than when the company was first listed in 2021. Allbirds trainers became popular among technology workers in Silicon Valley, but the company faced serious challenges in recent years. New Bird AI will buy advanced graphics processing units, GPUs. Oh my god! And I thought the Steam machine was gonna get some what's it called, like get some traction, because I remember they were saying some company was like, we're gonna make our own chips, but oh my god, they're buying more. Graphics processing units, computer chips that power AI, Allbirds said in a statement. The company said it had seen a quote gap in the market, unquote. BS. There's no gap in this market for stuff like that. If anything, it's becoming oversaturated. And we'll get to that in a second. That has left many businesses without enough computing power because the industry cannot keep up with demand. Yeah, of course, but its long-term plan is to offer on-demand graphics chips and cloud services that are specifically built for AI. Yeah, the Allbirds brand will be owned by fashion conglomerate American Exchange Group, which includes names like Echo, Untold, and Aerosols. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that one wrong. Following a $39 million deal announced in March, Allbirds chief executive Joe Vernaccio said the move will allow the wool runner maker to, quote, thrive in the years ahead, unquote. Branding consultant Wei Khan got everything from Conduit Asia likened the move to a, quote, liquidation, unquote, rather than a pivot, using the stock market shell of its shoe brand to move into an unrelated business. Retail analyst Hitha Herzog said the excitement over Allbirds, quote, just by putting AI in an announcement, unquote, makes it, quote, clearly a meme stock, unquote. The meme stock phenomenon gained prominence during the COVID-19 pandemic when some companies' shares surged in value due to strong interest from retail investors was boosted on social media. There is, quote, certainty AI mania that is going on, unquote, given the lack of proof of product or earnings from the company related to its business, Herzog said. Allbirds was founded in 2015 by former football player Tim Brown and clean technology businessman Joey Zwingler. The footwear firm opened dozens of shops in the US and around the world, including the UK, New Zealand, China, Singapore, targeting casual joggers, office workers, and yoga lovers. But the company has struggled to turn a profit since it's listed on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange in New York 5 years ago. Its stock market value had plummeted from a high of more than $500 a share to around $2.50 just before the AI pivot was announced. The announcement gave the new Bird AI a shell to trade on, but, quote, a stock going from $3 to $17 on a press release doesn't restore $4 billion in destroyed value, unquote, Khan said. Now, again, we talked about the dot-com bubble in a couple sessions ago, but this is an example. I was watching one of the a financial professor from Yale. He was talking about the dot-com bubble. I mean, one, the dot-com bubble was from a bunch of people investing into companies that had no reason to have their stocks go up. But another reason was because companies that shouldn't have just been websites were listed as websites because the companies that were websites, because of the craze of having .com, everyone's getting more access to the internet. If you just had your business was .com, which is where the .com comes from in the .com bubble, the values of your shares would essentially increase. He was talking about it because he was talking about a financial advisor because he was starting a company, and the guy's like, just make your company a website and then sell your products from there and have the website itself be the business that you list on the stock exchange, because in his words, because of the craze, people just go up, the price goes up. This is exactly the same thing. We have companies making shoes. Now, granted, they haven't been turning a profit on the Nasdaq. That's an absolutely fair assessment to make there. But went from making shoes to AI making. I did make a statement earlier. I did read it wrong. But they will buy GPUs. So they're buying GPUs.
They're graphics as a service.
Yeah, to allow so AI can be used on it.
Gas.
Yeah, so we used to make shoes. We need to turn a profit. Let's make a press statement and turn our company into an AI company. And then now the shares went up 580%. So we have that, and then we have the barrier to entry from a couple articles ago being lowered to 0, so anybody can buy whatever they want, day trading. This is a .com bubble. It's like it's almost like reading a book. It's like reading the Bible the second time. You know what's gonna happen. You're still upset that certain people, Judas, are doing certain things. But you can't stop it.
It's just it's the .com bubble all over again. Everyone saw the .com bubble and was like, yeah, but this is unironically the one thing where it's like, rip to everyone who thought they were uh, better, who were punished by the gods for their hubris, but I'm better than that. I'm better than everyone. I'm better than maybe even the gods. Like, RIP to everyone who was hurt by the .com bubble, but that could never happen to me. My company inflates for valid reasons, maybe even invalid reasons.
My
that
company's
I could make
different.
A killing off of. My company's different.
Yeah, it gives
like
off.
It's
Yeah, it gives off the whole like it's my turn to make money, kind of
yeah.
that kind of mentality. Like
Right, the .com bubble wasn't so bad for the people that made it out.
Essentially, yeah. Oh my god, I forgot where I was gonna go with that. But yeah, but it's like, well, it worked so well back then, and we made a lot of money. What if we do it again? We can make even more money. I've got a couple notes here. A primary reason for investor optimism is the potential for AI to drastically improve a firm's efficiency in production, the rate at which inputs are turned into outputs. That's one reason why AI stocks are going up. Whether the fact that the companies understand what's going on is besides the point. It's what the value of stocks is what people believe it is, and if these people believe that these companies can make the same amount of product, sell the same amount of product with less people, that's more money in their pocket, more money to shareholders, more money in dividends. So if they see that, it doesn't matter if they understand what the AI is doing. It doesn't matter that some of these companies have actually had to rehire the people that they let go because the AI wasn't doing what they thought it was going to do. Doesn't matter. People will invest into a company if they think that, well, what I just said. Historically, great fortunes have resulted from figuring out how to reduce cost to charge lower prices and gain a mass market. Problem is, we've talked about this before. There's the gap between the haves and the have-nots is widening. I know you don't like averages, but I think the average like bonus for a CEO or like higher up manager level people at a company, the average bonus was like $20 million, $18 to $20 million, and their salaries, again, averages, we don't like it, is like $1 million a year. Not trying to be mean. They clearly know how to run a company. I don't have a company, but I don't think their services are worth $21 million a year. I could be wrong. I think it could be a lot less, but that means people who are, companies aren't going to lower their prices just because they can make something cheaper. The fact that prices have done nothing but increase for the past 40, 60, 80 years tells us that inflation goes up. The price of things has outpaced the rate of inflation by miles. So, besides the point. AI represents a substitution for capital labor. I already talked about that. When a company announces an AI switch, the rising price act as a quote good news unquote, signaling to the market that this is where the quote rates of return are the highest. Already talked about that. Doesn't matter if the company's actually going to return a profit using AI. If people believe it will, they'll throw their money at it. Now, I should probably get into why they do that. Now, theoretically, when you buy stock, you should. Okay, well, you shouldn't, but ideally, people think that they're going to get some kind of dividend. What happens is, company takes that money, they make investments, do whatever they got to do to their production. Let's say they make a profit. A portion of that profit, I think they get to decide. You as a shareholder don't get to decide. I think the company gets to decide how much of a dividend you get based on how many shares you have. So theoretically, the more a company does, the more kickback you get in dividends. Not granted, I say the company decides. Companies have an incentive to give out higher dividends or a higher percentage of their dividends because then people will, in theory, buy more of their stock. So when people think that, I stated earlier, people think that a company is going to at least maintain the same level of production, same level of revenue, but same level of revenue, but because there's less people being replaced with AI, profits are up. Because profits are up, bigger dividends, bigger kickbacks. So, fast example of why people invest in stocks. The quote present value unquote of a stock is the sum of its anticipated future benefits added up and discounted for the fact that they are delayed. Exactly. People are going to buy stocks now in hopes that their dividends later on, a year from now, maybe in a quarter from now if people are crazy, a year from now, dividends are coming back. As we stated a couple segments ago, the barrier to entry is lower. We have the AI, at least the big AI companies, IPOs, in I think it's like November, December area. People will buy AI stocks now in hopes that once those companies hit the market, value increases, hit peak, pull out. So that's the future value thing. History shows that the market crashes are often fueled by a quote new financial contraption unquote AI that is quote theoretically and sophisticated yet poorly understood unquote AI, which quote mutates and then stresses unquote. So, like with the dot-com bubble and with the mortgage-backed securities, we talked from the 2007-2008 financial crash. People see like, oh, this looks like a good investment. They throw money in. Turns out it's not as good as they think or as good as they're advertised. We'll back to that buying hot dogs from the store versus buying hot dogs from someone you don't know. Example. Once the what's called, people buy stock. Once the company starts to not bring a profit, which is weird, AI companies have already told us they're not bringing back a profit, so I don't understand why it's not stressed. What do I know? I'm not a day trader yet, but
maybe this time.
But usually when companies are stressed, they can't produce a dividend, which is, it's possible. You invest in stock, you don't get a dividend because the company didn't make a profit. Well, people are going to see that as, I'm not making money from this company, I got to pull out and put it somewhere that it is. Not trying to be mean to most people. Most people don't understand how AI works. I'm one of those people. I use AI as a glorified Google search, for sure. I would absolutely not use AI to, say, edit my videos. I would use AI to make thumbnails, but I'm not an artist, that's why. But other than that, I don't know how AI works. I don't understand why it works. I don't know how AI is replacing a bunch of people. I mean, I know why, but I don't know how they think it could. Well, I guess I do think I know how they think it could, but in my mind, it doesn't work out. My example is that companies have started rehiring the people that they fired. But during the final note, I'm going to move on from this. During the dot-com bubble, market values for companies with, quote, no current earnings and in many cases poor prospects for ever having earnings, unquote, soared to incredible heights as, quote, ordinary people became day traders, unquote. That's exactly what we're seeing here. Allbird, granted they started out like $500 for a share back in 2021, 2022. They have dipped to, $2.50 a share. This is not... Now, granted, we can absolutely make the point that shoes weren't their calling. It's AI. For sure. We can make that. I'm not going to. But it's a company that isn't doing well and is switching to something that they see as popular. They don't understand it. I'm not trying to be mean to them. And clearly they know how to at least start a business.
Is it mean to be right? Come on now.
I know, for sure. But it's like you're going from shoes to GPUs. That was a bar. But
bars.
It's, you know what I mean? It's not like they went from shoes to like AI shoes and then jumped to AI. No. We went from
AI shoes.
Track how far you are and where your exact location is. That way they always know where you're at, for sure.
Yeah.
But they're going from something that isn't associated with their brand. In fact, they've rebranded to, I'm trying to be mean, I'm not trying to speak for them, but jump on the AI hype train. Because they see it's being lucrative. They see it's got, to be fair, it's got potential. I don't think it's going to go as far as people think it will, but it has the potential. For sure, everyone's still using websites today, so the dot-com bubble couldn't have been entirely wrong, but it didn't go as far as people thought it would. Now, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. So they're not making a lot of earnings. They have poor prospects in having earnings. They make a shift. People that used to have $25,000 to day trade don't have to have that cushion. They don't have to have that barrier. They can start buying into a company that has no prospects. And we're going to be honest here. You buy stocks because you think you're going to, the value of the stocks can go up. Realistically, this is inflated. 580% is inflated. Let's get that out of the way. But you buy stocks because you want to get dividends back. If this company is still not going to turn a profit, people who are buying at the inflated $17 value, it's going to go to essentially zero.
Yeah.
Which is what happened with the dot-com bubble. People, it's like going into an MMA gym, finding someone who's been there for 2 weeks, and it's like, wow, you know how to throw a punch and a kick. How about you come onto the main event for the UFC card? They weren't doing that good to begin. Okay, yeah, that's where we're at. We're at the okay mark, but they're not gonna perform well. Now, granted, they might get a lucky knockout on Chuck Liddell. I think it was Chuck Liddell. Here Comes the Boom.
Ooh.
Here Comes the Boom. Is that what the movie was with Kevin James? It was something about like some science teacher. He started fighting to get money for his classroom. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it could happen. There could be even with websites that were doing well during the dot-com bubble, a lot of them aren't here anymore. MySpace, AOL, times change.
Yep.
And at least those companies started out as websites. I can't imagine a company that starts out as making shoes, pivots to AI, has experience in the field of AI. Now, granted, they could hire people. Besides the point. So, it's just a dot-com bubble again.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to add before I move on?
Dude, it's just the dot-com bubble again. It's just everyone's going, we all know the dot-com bubble. Yeah, dude, no, you don't understand. The dot-com bubble was like when people would just slap .com on their business to make it seem more tech forward. We're not like that. We're actually integrating AI in a way that others aren't, bro. They're not. In the dot-com bubble, all they did was they slapped .com and they made a website. They didn't integrate it into their business model, bro. This is integrated into our business model. Oh yeah, really? How are you doing that? We have a business subscription to Claude Code. Oh my god. Insert the people from The Big Short, just like the guy who plays Steve Carell, that actor?
I think so, yeah.
Just that scene where it's like, look at my quant, and it's like, it's so over. It's so over.
Mm-hmm. The signs are there.
Yeah, that's
the start of it. And to be fair, this might be a result.
Everyone's high on the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, everyone's high on the Kool-Aid. And it's the only thing to drink. We just stated in the last...
We're all big sipping together.
Yeah, man. We stated in the last article, people have less than $500 in savings. And only that with how inflation's going up, it's better to own assets than... Now, I'm not saying this. This is not financial advice. If you only have $500, don't put it in stock. You might need it. This is not financial advice. Don't you listen to him. Don't you listen to him. This is not financial advice. But... If people have that mindset of, I can get rich quick, here's a company that literally went from $2.50 to $17. All you had to do was buy what was it, take your take your $500, buy what was it? So, 1 second.
You take like 50 grand, you dump it into buying
Yeah, you
like
buy
six
you
GPUs.
buy you know you buy 40 of the all bird stock, and then you buy 40. You come out with a profit. You come out with like $6,000.
Yep.
That's easy money. In an economy where
Easy
where
money.
keeping money in the bank is not bueno, don't put the money, if you're not okay with losing it, don't put it anywhere besides your wallet. Um,
Which is why they're dropping the barriers to entry. They want you jumping at this stuff. They want you to make that decision to go, well, I mean, if I don't have to put in that much money,
yeah, if I can just put
like,
in
sure,
like
you're right. There might be a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of the population that could responsibly do this at less than $25,000. It is it if you if you are not already like a someone who is, but I'll say this much: if you are the type of person who could do that, you probably also are savvy enough to get together the money um, to do it legitimately.
yeah.
It's kind of like
So
if you're not already in the club, there's a reason for it.
there's a reason for it for sure. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not saying don't chase your dream. We're not saying don't chase your dreams, but
Exactly.
maybe earn the
There's a
money
knowledge
first.
base there's a knowledge base that has to exist first.
Yeah.
There's a reason that there's friction between
And
you and what you want.
and that's why
It's to
you're
see if
listening
you're
to
worthy.
us. That's why you're listening to this channel. You want to get
Exactly.
in on the knowledge.
You know, the
The
knowledge.
Giffen, economic news, research, and commentary. This is not financial
Put it on a
advice.
t-shirt. This
Put
is
it on a
not financial
t-shirt.
advice.
This is not financial advice.
This is commentary
This
and
is pure
entertainment.
commentary. But well, for our last part, we've got comes from CBS News. Governor Hochul and Mayor Mondani propose NYC PDA, or whatever that word is, tax on second homes worth over $500 million. The New York Governor Kathy Hochul and the New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani are proposing a tax on second homes on ultra wealthy who own posh property in New York City but are not residents. The surcharge would apply to all second homes valued above $500 million and is projected to bring in more than $500 million annually. Quote, this is not a tax on residents, unquote. Hochul is holding firm to her pledge that not add to the tax burden of New York residents. That means no new income and corporate taxes, and they didn't write that. They need a copy editor, and that she will not allow the mayor to raise property taxes. Mamdani, a Democratic socialist, can still claim a victory, however, because rich people will still get hit in the pocketbook. They just don't. They just don't live here, and they can't vote him out of office. Quote: it is not a tax on residents. That is so important. We're talking about people who are ultra wealthy. I mean, there are literally Russian oligarchs buying up properties, driving up the property value, unquote, Hochul said. At her announcement, Hochul surrounded herself with headlines accentuating multi-million-dollar home purchases by the so-called oligarchs, despite the Democratic socialists like Bernie Sanders and Mamdani to announce her plan for a PDA tax to help close the city's budget gap. I think there's a logic behind them also contributing to the city, because they're here because this is a great city and it has so much to offer. But those come at a cost, and I think it's fair to ask them to contribute, Hochul said. How the paid tax works, Hochul said there's about 13,000 apartments of the ultra wealthy that could be taxed, like one at. I'm not gonna mention the person's name. I find that kind of gross. Paid tax will be an annual surcharge on 1 to 3 family homes, condos, and co-ops targeting non-residents. It would apply to homes that aren't primarily residences. The tax will ensure owners who don't live in the city or pay city income tax are still contributing to essential services, including policing and parks, Holchul's office said. Quote, the measure targets ultra wealthy out of city residents and global elites who use New York City real estate as a vehicle for wealth storage rather than as homes, unquote, a statement from Mamdani's office said. Holchul said Holchu still has to negotiate the so-called fine print with the legislator, like how much the surcharge will be and if there will be a sliding scale depending on how much the second home costs. Quote, if you can afford a if you can afford a $500 million second home that sits empty most of the year, you can afford to contribute like every other New Yorker, unquote, Solchul said in a statement. A spokesperson for the state assembly told CBS News New York paid a tere tax or whatever is something lawmakers have long supported. Mayor Mamdani on the idea. Mayor Mamdani said he's glad that property can be taxed. Quote, this is a kind of wealth that is being stored in the city, and it is a residence that is so often empty, unquote, Mamdani said. While the mayor didn't mention his ongoing demand to tax rich city residents, his fellow Democratic socialists took to social media to up the ante. Quote, we won't stop until oligarchs and the richest corporations pay everything they owe, unquote, New York City Democratic Socialists posted on social media. CBS News New York asked Holchul if the PIDA tere tax is a way to appease the demands of Sanders and the Working Families Party to tax the rich. Quote, I feel no need to appease anyone, unquote, Holchul said. Has said taxing the rich is the only way to make up for the $5.3 billion budget gap. Thanks to the support of blah, blah, blah. Mamdani previously said personal income taxes on residents earning at least $1 million a year need to be increased. Holchu's $226 billion state budget proposal didn't include any broad-based income tax raises. She said it was designed to improve affordability without raising taxes. Republican gubernatorial candidate Blakeman speaks out. Bruce Blakeman, the Nassau Country executive running agents, slammed the idea. No tax hike promising. Okay. So basically, they're politicians going back and forth. So actually, I'm kind of conflicted on this. But I'm gonna go through my notes first. I have economics defined as the study of scarce resources which have alternative uses. Land and high-end residential buildings in New York City are finite resources. When a tax is applied to these assets, it attempts to redirect the flow of capital and the use of that land. Now, I know they said that the second homes are nearly empty. That does not mean they're still not like paying rent. They're not paying their whatever. There's still something that's being paid. I can't imagine that you can buy a property and then do nothing with it. Do nothing with it. You buy a property in New York City and pay zero money towards it unless you stay there. So something's still being paid, and the government's still getting a tax out of that. They're trying to tax the non-residents who have, buildings there, which, I'm actually kind of back and forth. I'm not a socialist by any means. I think it's a stupid idea. But we'll get to that. We will get to that. However, this is a dumb idea to start with, mainly because the problem is you eventually run out of. I've never seen a quote. The problem with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money. If you're going to start taxing the second homes of people who don't live in New York City, they will just sell it and then take their business elsewhere. Because there's no need. If it's the value of the home is going to be an extra burden, they would. I mean, granted, I don't have that much money, but again, if they're not living there, they probably only go there for meetings or whatever. So it's a luxury.
It sounded like in the article. I was going to say, it sounded like in the article what it said, what the ostensible reason why they had these was so that way it was like a form of like wealth storage, right? So what you do is you go and you buy. So like this isn't really common in anywhere in many other places, but you still see it somewhat often in New York where you can buy an apartment, right? So you basically go, hey, this floor I am buying this floor of the building. I own this floor of the building or this set of rooms, right? As opposed to renting. And so what they would do is they would either buy buildings or they would buy rooms in buildings or floors of buildings. And then they would just hang on to them, right? This is like This is like the wealthy person version of like the old guy who doesn't want to give up his like random plot of land in like middle of nowhere, you know, like middle of nowhere
Montana.
Montana or something,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, you know, well, I'm not giving this up. I bought this and I'm waiting for it to appreciate in value so I can cash out and blah blah. Right. What they're doing is they're instead of putting it in an investment account or a bank or something that's maybe or like the stock market, which could be volatile and suffer from stuff, you stick it into. She mentioned like Russian oligarchs. We'll assume that what they're saying is true for the sake of argument. It seems like they're saying, hey, you don't just get to buy, like, or you can, but we don't like that you're choosing to buy an apartment complex or an apartment floor or an apartment singular and not living here, not contributing, right? Your cash flow, you made a one-time payment and then you're paying like your annual taxes at the state, local, and whatever other level, right? But you're not buying food here, you're not working with businesses here, or like you're not living in this city, right? As a like high spending person, we want your money moving through the city, not one time purchase of a thing and then you're just gone. That's actually bad for us because that means that apartment is off the market. That means someone who might live here, right, even at a lower initial cost, they'd still be paying, you know, taxes. They might pay less in taxes, but your actual throughput, it's a much better throughput proposition. This person is spending more money in the city. They're, you know, taking public transit, or they're paying to take public transit, or they're, you know, paying to fill up a car with gas, or they're doing whatever else, as opposed to owning it so that way they can sell it to another wealthy person in like 6 years, and like to buy something or to sell it to back to the apartment or to sell, you know, to whomstever at new market rate. You know, they're profiting off of the fact that New York is a hot spot for economic activity, and then they're kind of shorting New York the city, by going, well, I guess not shorting, but they're going, actually I think the city's going to do really well, so actually I'm going to buy an apartment. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to want to be here because it's a great big economic center, so I'm going to buy an apartment. I don't want to live there, I just want to own an apartment there. So that way, in the future, when the price has gone up, up, and up by the factor of me buying this apartment, meaning that there are less apartments on the market, because I know people aren't going to build as many apartments, I think that the apartment market is going to go up. I'm investing in the apartment market by taking more off of the market. And then, when I think the price has gone up high enough, I'll sell it back to the building, or when I need to cash out on stuff, I've got this I wouldn't say like semi-liquid, but I've got this consistent asset that I can just send back to the owner that I'm not actually putting any wear and tear on. I might have to do like vague maintenance, but it's cheaper than paying, you know, a financial advisor. Or it's cheaper than, you know, doing whatever. Or, you know, I bought 2 floors at the Penn Street building, the really tall pencil one that's like all ultra luxury penthouses, that are each like $1 million each. So now I have 2 $1 million assets that I can, at my relative leisure, sell off to a buddy or back to the building or whatever. And I don't have to deal with how expensive it is to, like, I could live in New York and I could do all my stuff in New York and I could do all this stuff, but I don't want to. I just want to, you know, hedge their market. I just want to make a profit off of the desirability of people living there without actually living there myself. And if you're the city of New York, you're going, hey, buddy, that's kind of fucking up my tax throughput. I need people who own property here to either let other people use that property, right? So think building owner, right? If you're a building owner, you own buildings in New York and you live in Miami, that's not necessarily a huge issue, so long as you're letting other people live in that building. If you're a building owner and you live in Miami and no one lives in your building, it's not an office building, it's just there to take up space because you know how expensive the space is, yeah, we actually have a problem with that. You're fucking up our tax throughput. The key to economies and the key to taxes especially is throughput. That's why the middle class bears the majority of the tax burden, because they have the most economic throughput. The money moves the fastest through the middle class. And the New York City, it seems like, has gone, hey, you're becoming a throughput blocker, and we need to up our throughput. So what we're going to do is we're just going to say, if you don't live here, we're just going to start making you, we're going to estimate the amount of money we think we would have made off of, the people who could have lived in this situation, the throughput we would have gotten, and you're going to compensate us for that. Because you're effectively taking that. We believe you're taking that from us, so we're going to make you be compensated for that. And as like, I don't think that this is going to be such a taxing policy that people en masse are just like, well, then where are all the rich people going to go? They're not going to leave the financial center of the world. Like, there's a reason they're buying space in New York. It's because it's so desirable. All they're saying is, listen, hey man, you want to profit off the city? You got to contribute to the city. You don't get to just make money off of a big project that we're all working on and then not be a part of the project. And especially, and you can do that, right? You can make money off the project we're all working on if you let people live in that building or in that apartment, right? Although gets iffy with like subletting laws, because you probably don't want people en masse, rich or not, buying an apartment and then subletting that out, because that would discourage building owners from building new housing, obviously. So it seems like they're just saying, listen, man, you want to have an expensive apartment here? No problem. You just got to live here. That's our only requirement. You just got to live here. You want to be, big man, money bags, make money off the back of our hardworking New Yorkers, or, the global financial hub? Listen, man, all we ask is that you live here. All we ask is that you spend money at our stores. All we ask is that you help contribute to the project. You help be a part of this. Not you're actually taking a chunk of it away because you know that because you know how valuable it is. That's what I think the goals of this new peer to tray, whatever it is, French nonsense.
I know, right?
Whatever the name of the tax is, I think that's the goal, is to go, if you want a piece of the pie, you got to help bake it.
Yeah, I get that. And like,
because I don't think, hold on.
Oh, you
I think the thing that a lot of people are reading this as is like, you can't be a building owner in New York without living in New York. And I don't think that's what's being said. I think what's being said is they're saying you can't buy an apartment here or buy a building here and then do nothing with it because you know how valuable the land it sits on is, or you know how valuable the space in the city is. And by denying people that space, you artificially increase the value of that space. You got to either live here, like you need to use it, like the residence it's supposed to be, because I think this is mostly on like apartments. Like, you either need to use it, or you need to compensate us for the throughput you're intentionally denying us, so that way you can make a profit. Because we don't want you we think as a city, if people lived here, or if you let people live here, we would have a better throughput for the city, and everyone would be better off, as opposed to, which, very socialist of them, as opposed to just you, Mr. Russian oligarch from overseas. That's what it seems like to me. That's what it seems like their goals are, is to just cut down on people who don't have a vested interest in the city, just looking to process off of it. It kind of seems like they're going, if you want a piece of the pie, you got to help us bake it.
Yeah, I get that, and that's the part where I'm like, I don't like Mamdani. I'm not a socialist, but to an extent, I can see it. I mean, because we talked like a month ago or like a month and a half ago, like one of the problems is that like people, millionaires or billionaires, they have a lot of money. Instead of putting it back into the system, they'll buy yachts, they'll buy 9 fancy cars, and they wouldn't drive it. They'll just, because it retains the value for them. Mm-hmm. So, to an extent, this is kind of what it seems like to me. That as you stated, they'll buy the homes because they know it's valuable, and it more or less retains the value, goes up in value, and because there's a scarcity, because it takes forever to build these places, value goes up, creates I don't want to say artificial scarcity, but with how slow it takes.
I mean, yeah, it depends on how you define artificial in the market. But
yeah, I was going to say, it takes time for things to get built. Demand, same or higher, supply low, price goes up. Right. So again, I'm not socialist by any means, for sure, but I might even concede a little bit. I kind of get it. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've got notes about problems with, like taxing, rent control or taxing high end apartments because it decentivizes people to buy homes. It decentivizes people to, at least for rent control, decentivizes people to leave where they are because the rent is locked and wages do
Mm-hmm.
go up over time. Uh, but if wages are locked, you essentially have a place to live and you make more money. The Also because if there's rent control or places are taxed, people don't want to spend money on a building that they're not going to get as much money from. They can't pay people to renovate, construction, maintenance. That's what I'm going to think of. Maintenance people because higher taxes. It decentivizes people to buy new buildings or buy construction companies to make new buildings that they can rent. But I hate to say it, and I'm sure I'm missing something, but I kind of get it. It's these essentially plots of land, we'll just say for lack of a better term,
Mm-hmm.
that aren't being used essentially. Um, as you stated,
Intentionally.
yeah, I would say maybe not intentionally, but it's like I don't think they're buying like, oh, I'm gonna buy it and I'm never gonna move there, but they'll buy it. They know it's got value, and they can always at least go to it. As you stated, New York's like the biggest like economic hub in the world, kind of thing. They'll buy it. Maybe they'll live there for a bit. Maybe it's a vacation home, whatever. But they know it's got the value, and if you're, as you stated, it if what's it called one way to boost the economy, at least on a I say small scale, New York City, is people got to spend money there. They got to do stuff there. It's a quote unquote support local business kind of stuff unquote. So I want to find fault. I really do, but that's my disdain for Mamdani and socialism in period. But I guess I have to concede on some points. I guess. Am I making sense? Like,
No, yeah. This just seems like it just seems like I understand where they're coming from, and honestly, as a solution to the problem, it doesn't seem like that bad of an idea. Um, and also, hey, listen, I'm pro America, all right? If what this does is removes if this makes one of our crown jewels more accessible to our guys and less accessible to some Russian oligarch who thinks he can profit off of the productivity of hardworking Americans,
oh yeah,
hell yeah,
absolutely.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, so ah all right. I gotta get a shot of bourbon. I'll give Mondani this one.
Every time his mom Donnie is right, take a shot.
Just I imagine I won't be super drunk in the future. So I mean, we'll see how it goes. I mean, like, even if it was a like, as you stated, like, you don't think that the people who do own the places they're not gonna just immediately sell it because one, if you can afford a $5 million place in New York, you can probably pay a little bit more in taxes, for sure. We'll say that, but let's say if they do sell it and they sell in mass. I know it's $5 million. I get that, but that increases supply when there's about the same amount of demand, theoretically. So that's more places for at least people in New York or people who want to move to New York. Granted, $5 million, you gotta be kind of wealthy to live in the
Mm-hmm.
places we're talking about, but it opens up theoretically, increasing supply with same amount of demand, price drops, but we'll see how it goes. I'm gonna keep an eye on it. I don't. But I mean, it's not a bad idea. We've complained about. We said it earlier, like 5-10 minutes ago. You know, you know, very wealthy people will just buy things that they don't need. To be fair to them, it's a store of value. You know what I mean? Like with inflation and all that stuff, it's better to buy. I don't want to don't want to justify it, but you buy a yacht to hold value. You buy fancy sports cars to hold value. You buy extra homes to hold value. Earlier. They do it to hold value.
You siphon the wealth, and then you put it in things that have innate value to them, and then voila.
Yeah, you hold it all. So the gap between the haves and the have-nots just increases. So I don't want to talk about it anymore.
He's right now.
He's fuck genius. Why didn't I think?
Why didn't I think of that?
But again, we'll see how it goes. And I guess the real test is, does it stop here? You know what I mean? Like how, like I don't know how fast they'll run through the money. They did state it was gonna be like $500 million a year annually. That's if that's if they keep it. You know what I mean? They keep their home.
Yeah.
Because if they, I don't think they will. You said you don't think they will. We don't think they'll. At least a majority of them will just put their places on the market. But let's say they do, and then first home New York buyers buy the places. Well, that project's gone. It doesn't bring in that $500 million annually. Ha! Take that, Zoran. But you know what I mean. So again, we don't think they'll leave, but it's something we'll look at, see how well it does.
Yep.
So yeah. All right then. Well, that's all I got. Well, if you made it this far, thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one.